it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. So today we have an amazing interview for you. I'm going to read a piece of the bio, but I'm actually going to talk about Aaron Grossman from Grossman Consulting. Aaron and I have known each other for years, probably the early years of Slater's success. We met out in New York City networking. We had personal things in common. Aaron's background and my background coincided. Aaron's background was decades in marketing intelligence. He's become to believe deeply in the power of well-crafted brand stories. That was his background. He worked with Fortune 100 companies on branding, copywriting, storytelling, so much more that market research. For the big guys in New York City back when, think Mad Men, but Aaron's not that old. Aaron, one of the things I admire about Aaron Grossman is he's a man that you don't stop. As world has turned, he's built a business that's anchored in branding and copywriting. I am fortunate to say Aaron Grossman of Grossman Consulting is part of the Slater Success team and has been for quite a while now. He looks at everything we puts out there, helps me, and we work hand in hand in our copy and our content. And I know it makes a huge impact. Aaron has interesting pieces of his story. In 2019, he moved to Panama. Who knew, right? He called me up, goes, I'm moving to Panama. I'm like, you going where? But he continued to expand his business today with U.S. partners in his portfolio that includes aquaculture, NDOs, global financial services. He's an interesting man. More than anything, Aaron and I get along because we both believe in the heart of and the value of strong relationships being the best result of business today. So Aaron, thanks for joining me here today at Her Success Story.
Thank you for having me, Ivy. This is a real treat for me. Good morning.
Good morning. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the market research, the advertising, the early years of your career, because that's the foundation of what you've built everything today off of.
Right.
Can you share a little bit about what you did and how you did it?
Sure. I came out of college. I don't want to go back that far, but I came out of college with a double major in theater and psychology, which quickly, I tried doing theater. I was an actor in the Utah Shakespeare Festival, but that I got way too bourgeois for doing auditions and stuff. So I visited, fortunately for me, I had a friend who knew a vice president at J. Walter Thompson, the advertising agency.
I remember J. Walter Thompson.
Yeah. And it has a little twist in my story too. And we both showed up to talk to him about what should we do, me and my friend, Candy. He described market research because that was his discipline, although he had switched over to account management, I mean. And I said, wow, that really sounds great. He was talking about Pop-Tarts, literally Pop-Tarts, and how they came to be. And my friend, Candy, said, this is awful. I don't ever want to do this. So anyway, one thing led to another, and I started off in a market research company. At the bottom of the ladder, I was doing what was called coding. You get physical paper questionnaires back, and you have to code the answers. So I went from that to, let's speed up the story now. I quickly realized that coding was not my life's work. And I was attracted to and recruited by advertising agencies. I worked at Gray Advertising, which at the time was
I remember Gray as well.
Yeah, it was a university for
huge.
Yeah, it was really very well respected and very well thought of. And I worked, and they worked your butt off. That was the other thing. So I worked hard and cycled through a couple of other jobs. I ended up working at J. Walter Thompson, where Joel Baumwoll, the fellow I was describing, had worked, but he had gone by then. J. Walter was a nice experience for me. I became relatively senior there and got big clients, the titans of business like Kodak and General Foods and
Sure.
Procter and Gamble. Anyway,
So you worked with the big brand companies, those true mega, especially at that time.
yeah,
P&G is still big. Kodak, well, kind of has
no,
shifted about.
Kodak is not that was a sad story, but
Yeah, that's a sad story for another day. But
yeah.
but these were anchor brands in business.
And not to spend too much time on this, but the experience of being a market researcher for packaged goods companies
Right.
like P&G, Unilever, like that, General Foods, led me to an opportunity as a market researcher with American Express, which was just opening a marketing department and a market research department, and they
Wow.
recruited from packaged goods companies. So I was fortunate in that I was asked to help them build methodologies, market research methodologies, because at that point I was already, giving speeches and being a leader. I was a partner in a market research company, so on and so forth. So that was a great experience, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. Um,
And so you did that for kind of let's look at this timeline because I want to bring it to where you are today because you've done so many amazing things.
Got it. I did that through my children's education. Market research sent both my kids to college,
There you
paid
go.
for their tuition. So it's 20 something years. And then, Ivy, the hammer came down. The industry changed tremendously. Market research companies that I was involved in and that I was a partner in, were being bought out by the big guys. And so it is today. There are really only, let's say, half a dozen huge market research companies globally.
Yeah.
Uh, so that
That
was,
whole industry had completely and it looked like it felt like in a flash just
yeah,
changed.
yeah, flash is the right word because it was overnight. It pulled the rug out from under me. And
And I
on,
think many others. I mean, I know
yes,
others,
right.
many, many others. It just was like the industry is just changed, not gone, but gone for so many.
Right, right.
How do you deal with that, and what did you do next? I mean, because there's dealing with it, which is a piece of, when the printing industry changed. I was already on my exit, but it was just like I was watching my colleagues like scrambling, like nobody knew like how do we survive? There's a fear there.
It was painful. It was painful, and scrambling is an apt operative term for what I did. Seriously.
Yeah.
I wandered in the desert for a few years until I discovered business networking in Manhattan. I joined BNI. I joined a BNI group, which is Business Networking International. I think that's what BNI
Yes.
stands for. But
I believe you're right.
it's one of the big ones in that has organized networking meetings weekly. And I actually started off there saying I was a market researcher. I can do research for you. I had a whole 30-second speech to, describe all of that. Until very shortly, very soon, I realized that I was talking to a room full of Manhattan executives who had no idea what I was talking about because I had led a privileged life talking to people who knew what market research was up until that point. So it was a real eye opener. And the other revelation I had going around the room, watching people describe themselves and struggle to come up with, a good elevator
Right.
pitch. And
How
then
do you introduce yourself? How do you write, what's the bio? How do I do all that?
exactly, exactly. This was not a problem for me, Ivy. This was something I won't say it was
So
mother's milk, but it was something I had been doing. I had been giving speeches and running, panel discussions and all that stuff. So, and including on the internet, by the way, the fledgling internet. So I stood up one day at my BNI group and said, I can help you write about yourself. I can help you write your LinkedIn profile. I can help you do your bio on your website. I can help you write a pitch for yourself if you have to do a proposal about who you are. And that slowly but surely took off. And time passed. I became involved with more networking groups, which eventually led me to you because we both
Right.
belong to a high level, relatively senior group of business executives in New York. And I found myself leaving behind the transactional work, the kind of retail work of writing LinkedIn profiles, to writing blogs, to writing stories, to using content as a way to market oneself. And that coincided with the revolution in digital marketing. So that
So,
worked nicely.
so I want to ask you, did you always know you were a good writer? Because market research doesn't always transform to writing skills. And in the transformation of your career, right, of going from working for the big ad agencies, but you're in the market research capacity, not necessarily the writing capacity, into starting your own business, Grossman Consulting, and writing for business leaders. Did you always know you had that skill set? Was it a surprise to you? Where'd you get the guts to market something you hadn't really done that much of previously?
Again, theater background, actor, all that stuff. There was always a little bit of show business. But your question is very relevant because it was market research that taught me how to be a good business writer in particular. When you're standing up in front of the titans of business at American Express and you have 30 seconds, because their attention span is going to wane immediately, 30 seconds to describe to them the results of their communications testing, research, you find the way to just be very Spartan and speak quickly and powerfully, compellingly. Now, the actual science or business of writing blogs or writing bios or writing,
Right.
all that stuff, that took some time. That took some learning how to do it. But I think putting concepts together and making them work in a compelling way came from the market research discipline. And I was highly, highly, highly motivated to do this because as a market researcher, I was always giving bad news to the copywriters and the creative team in the room. Your commercial didn't work, and here's why. People don't like your product, and here's why.
Why?
Right. Here's a segmentation of your marketplace, and you are not hitting this particular segment, and here's why. So, yeah, market research is pretty elemental to me becoming a good writer, and then just living it. You have to live it. You really have to be experiential with one's career. And the other thing I would add, Ivy, is that at that point in my life, I was not a youngster anymore. I was just turning 60. I was in my late 50s, early 60s when market research left me. I aged out of it. I wasn't really scared or frightened or put off or intimidated by the business of writing for other people. It was engaging and I like it. I still like it today. So
So there's something about you, Aaron, that your willingness to always approach and meet new opportunities. So many people are like, let me think. As I've known you for all these years, you've just stepped into, I'll give it a try. And I remember when you told me you're going to move to Panama, I'm like, you moving where? Like
yeah,
Panama. I'm
yeah.
like you're leaving everything in New York and like you were like, if it doesn't work out, I'll shift it. You didn't miss a beat. Nothing stopped you. There was no fear. But I have to, what was the catalyst? What led you to go to Panama?
Two things. One was that I was as happy as I am and was as a copywriter. It doesn't pay a hell of a lot of money. It's not, the best paying job in the world. And I was living on the Upper East Side. I was living on 96th Street in Park.
It's
So
expensive.
it was very expensive. Yeah, it was very, very expensive. And I was on a treadmill and, just earning money to pay the rent and being frustrated about that. But the real catalyst was I have two children. I have a daughter who actually, at that point in time, was still living in Manhattan with her husband and two kids. And, I was we're a close family. I saw my grandchildren every week and da 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 da. And I also have a son. David is an adventurer, always has been. He got his law degree and immediately went to Central America on a bike trip to congratulate himself. And I'm not kidding you, literally a day later, he calls us and says, "Okay, I found out what I want to do." And I said, this is a 2 a.m. phone call, from him in Nicaragua. I said, I know what you want to do. You're going to come home. You're going to work at a white shoe law firm on Wall Street because all that money we spent to send you to law school, it's got to go somewhere. It's got to be worth something. No, he is an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And he too is much, much, much more fearless than I am. The world is
So apparently there's a stream here that runs in the family a little bit.
well, okay, thank you. You can say that. He has a wonderful mother also, we're a close family. We're a close family. We're not married anymore, but we're still a close family. Anyway, he called me and said, I'm starting this business in Panama. He had left Nicaragua and went to Panama. I'm starting this business here and you're uncomfortable with your money situation. Why don't you come down here and try it? Just try it for a few months. And that's the part where I didn't really think hard about it. I said, sure, I will. I'd like that. So I sublet my Manhattan apartment. I didn't turn my back on it, but I left. And in 2 weeks down here in Panama, I knew that this was for me. Why? How?
I was going to ask, as we wind down here, how did you know that this was right?
The only risk that I thought I was taking was that my clients were all based in the United States, primarily in the New York metro area. And I was used to having meetings, physical face-to-face meetings with everybody. You come with something to present it to them. So that risk was, well, what happens if I go offshore and it's only telephone and the new technology called Zoom at that point? This was 6 years ago, so it was a while ago. And that's the part that within 2 weeks, I lost all of my, fears about that because I had a wonderful client that Susan Catalano, with whom I was doing a lot of work for many of her clients. She's a digital marketer, and I was her writer, hired gun. I'm one of many, by the way. I'm not the only one. And she just rolled right into having Zoom meetings and communicating, by overnight internet and all that stuff. So that put me at ease. And the other thing within 2 weeks that clinched it for me was es muy barato aquí. It's much cheaper here. So, when Uber costs $3 to get from point A to point B, and that same trip in New York would be $25 on Uber, that sang to me. And I guess the third thing was way past the 2 weeks part of it, but I'm calmer here. I just live a
It's a different it's a different way of life. It's an easy. I have to say, one of the things as we talk often, Aaron and I, a couple of things I admire about you is you've built an entire network down there, an entire social life, a business network. You're involved in so many things. You didn't kind of just say, okay, it will be, at this point in my life, a less expensive way to work. But you have really built a home and a community for yourself.
One of the tricks of being a successful expatriate, you're not in your home country anymore. One of the tricks that helps for success is to have family here. And I have family here. I have a son who got married, had twin boys, inherited a stepdaughter. So all of that happens twice, maybe three times a week. I play with these 3 to 3 year old twins, and I'm not working with my son at all whatsoever. I mean, he's off doing his own thing, but we're close. I see a lot of him, and that also led to other opportunities, social opportunities, and business opportunities down here.
So one of the things, you and I are in a way, I'll call it old school, yet or value aligned of the value of relationships. And you come back to New York, several times a year to be with family and friends, and you are planning ahead way in advance. You see everyone, old business contacts. Oh, you don't lose touch. And I want to talk about this for a second because this is a huge value in business leadership is understanding your relationships. Remember to stay in touch with your relationships. How do you navigate all of that?
Relationships are everything. The business relationship, your personal relationship, your financial relationships with people. It is the bedrock of everything. It is what started me off and continued into changing and having a second career. And relationships down here also matter.
Yeah.
However, I don't think I work hard at it, Ivy. I do go home and I naturally see people like you. I see my family. I see my doctors. I see my this, my that. But it's important for me to reach out and keep in touch with everybody that I can. And I do. I do. I mean, I don't see everybody every time I go home to New York, but I'd say I stay in touch with a core group of about 6 to 7 friends who are also business associates at least once or twice a year. I physically see them. So it's important. It's very
Let
important.
me ask you this, Aaron. What has surprised you in your journey?
Success.
Okay, tell me more. Tell me more.
Yes. Listen, I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. So, the value that you have growing up is that you're lucky to be here. My parents made it
Yeah.
and we were lucky to be here. But the notion of success is not written into the contract. It just isn't. So, you stumble, you fall, you get out, you get back up again. It still surprises me when I'm awarded a new project. It's like, wow, the good news is I got the job. The bad news is I got the job and I got to do it. It's yeah,
Because you do have fun. You've built a full life for yourself.
yeah.
It's really lovely and it's very inspiring to watch you balance the work, the business, the new relationships, the friendships, the old relationships, the friendships and family.
Yeah.
And you never seem to miss a beat. You just flow with it. And I think that is one of the greatest lessons I have learned from watching you.
Well, thank you. I've learned a lot from you too. You're a shining beacon to a lot of us who know you.
Yeah.
The stuff that you've done is inspiring. It's pretty cool.
Well, Erin Grossman of Grossman Consulting, thank you for joining me here today on Her Success Story. Thank you for sharing your story, your journey, and a piece of listeners. Just if you have been following Her Success Story, if you follow Slater Success, I have been talking recently, probably about the last month or so, on the value of building really strong and really valuable teams. And I thought it would be very cool to share some of my teams and their stories and their careers and their journeys in success with our listeners. So, Erin, thanks today. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Any last tips for our listeners?
I would like to leave you with a thought, which
Okay.
is that working with Slater Success for me has been great, and it's like coming home. It really is. And working with you in particular,
Well, thank you.
Ivy, is like working with family. I mean, seriously, it's really swell to be able to do that, to be able to choose who you work with, and then to find out that it's people that you love. It's people that really make a difference in your life. So
I love it.
thank you.
Oh, thank you. Listeners, if you found today's episode of Her Success Story interesting and you think you know somebody who would actually like to listen to it, please feel free to share it forward. Feel free to hit subscribe and listen weekly. We hit the ground running with new content every Monday. Those of you who are longstanding listeners, before you know it, we're going to be getting ready for our series on nonprofit leadership that we do every holiday season from Thanksgiving through New Year's, which is always near and dear to my heart. And thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.